Welcome everybody to this panel discussion of distinguished web scientists. I'm joined by Professor Les Carr, who you've all met, and a group of very distinguished web science students to address some of the questions you've been raising on the MOOC this week. So perhaps you could just run around quickly and say who you are and what your particular interests in web science are.
So I'm Professor Les Carr. My interest has been in open access and open knowledge and open data and ways of benefiting the public good.
My name is Rafael. I'm interested in about the values exchange process on the web.
My name is Clare Walsh and I'm interested in how online tools can be used to improve education.
Hi, I'm Johanna Walker and I'm looking at innovation with open data.
Hi, I'm Mark Anderson and I'm looking at preservation of knowledge in hypertext.
Hi, I'm Jack Webster and I'm looking at music streaming services and the use of recommendation technologies.
Great, thank you. So the first question then that we've been asked, and I'm going to pose to the panel and to Les first of all, is are we all being forced online? Will it be the only way we can interact with companies or services?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question, and I think if it had been asked a couple of years ago, we might have talked about, the pressure to use IT and how, everybody was going around with smartphones, and the force being forced to use was this headlong rush into a technology without consideration. But I think there are other forces at work here, and I'm aware that I just had a meeting with some local politicians, local councils, who are expressing the fact that the outcome of austerity is they just don't have the capability to deliver services in an offline way anymore. They don't have enough money to run help and advice sessions. They don't have enough money to have physical people in physical offices processing forms and talking to people. So increasingly services are being run online as a way of saving money. And we see that at a local level, and we see that at a national level with the way that unemployed people have to log on and sign in using a service to look for new forms of work. So I think to some extent we are being forced into using technologies as a way of cutting costs.
I think a concern coming up from this is what happens to the ownership of our content and our data following the migration to online and the web. So I look at music streaming services, and these companies provide access to music, and for users of these services, we are no longer owning the music itself. It's purely rented through these companies. So as soon as a company decides to remove something or it goes bust, you no longer have access to that content, and maybe you've created lots of playlists, you've built up your own music collection, and now they own that and they're kind of in control of it. So something happens, you no longer own it. So this kind of ownership of lots of different forms of things, like whether it's music or personal documents. If you think about government, there's lots of kind of sensitive information. I think ownership is something we have to challenge if we inevitably do move more into the online world with the things that we do.
Okay, well thank you for that. We better move on to the next question. Hopefully that was a useful overview of things that are happening. So the second question then is, how do we prevent misuse of technology? For example, think about smart meters or kettles and the Internet of Things. What could go wrong? Anyone want to comment on that?
Yeah, we've actually been talking on the MOOC this week about smart kettles and the various kind of whether you might use them or not. And I think the issue with smart kettles is it's a realistic thing that could happen. This could bring down the national grid. Imagine that somebody hacked in, set everyone's smart kettles to boil at the same thing. It overpowered the national grid. The whole thing crashed. It brings the country to standstill. It's a dystopian view of the future, but it's not an impossible view of the future. So this is a really important question. And the important thing, I think, really is that it's the technology is there, the security levels are there, they can be implemented, but there's a massive, massive weak spot in them. and they're sitting around this table, and they're out there, and they're buying smart kettles and smart TVs, and they are people. We have been for quite a long time the weak spot of security with technology. We do things like we leave our password as password. We do things like we answer phishing emails or spam emails. Even when we're quite technologically aware, I think it was you, Les, who said to me the other day, do you know for a fact your computer's not participating in a botnet? And I was like, God, I don't know. I have no idea. Should I know? How should I know? Well, now I'm worried. And so that's the real issue. So it's a kind of an issue of educating us to be aware of the importance of not leaving our passwords as password and understanding what we can do to make everybody safer by our own behaviour.
Yeah. Anybody else want to chip in on that?
I think there's an interesting problem there because it's not just us. There is a problem for the industry because security and ease of use are kind of opposed to each other. So the industry has created these kinds of devices to use in our homes and made them as simple as possible for us so we don't have to go and type in new passwords every time we put in a light bulb. But how do you type in a password to a light bulb anyway? I mean, there are some technical, but also, and so they've created this massive infrastructure already, which is highly insecure. And so, there's levels of blame everywhere, and we really have to up our game. As you say, it's not just the fact that my kettle might blow up, and someone would inconvenience me. It's the fact that by coordinating these things, like we see with DDoS attacks on the internet, distributed denial of service, where lots of individual devices are forced into trying to contact one particular focus, that you bring that focus target down. And so and to do that to the national grid is a whole new ball game, really. But we've got to up our game. We've got to start thinking about this differently.
Okay, thank you. And I guess a very much related question I'm coming on to next, which is, will human control of the web be lost, or has it already? I think, Rafael, you were keen to beam in on that one.
Well, I think that if we imagine that algorithms are controlling us for a long time, for example, law, constitution, regulations, all of them are algorithms. Now those algorithms can be implemented through programs or to servers, websites, a lot of these. So I think the human race has been released its control to these algorithms. So the question is if those algorithms are beneficial for us, or we're just in a comfort way within our personalized cubicles within the internet. So we are just demonstrating that how selfish or how altruist are we using the web, but within in a cage for us that it's built by those algorithms.
That sounds rather scary to me.
I kind of take issue with the idea that the algorithm or these technical systems are operating completely autonomously, because a lot of these systems are designed with kind of like user behavior incorporated into them. So people do things on the web. So say in my case it's music recommendation. People listen to music, and then these systems are designed to observe patterns in user behavior and then make judgments about what the best music recommendation might be. But those decisions are made in response to user behavior in an iterative process between what the algorithm recommends and what people do with it. So there's no kind of, humans aren't out of the loop. There's a constant kind of exchange between technical actors and what human actors are doing. So this idea that machines are kind of autonomous, in that sense, I disagree with, because I think there is definitely a kind of exchange between human action and technical kind of agency.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next question now, which is looking at how the web could or should be integrated into other disciplines of study. I think, Mark, you had a view on that one.
Yes, I was in looking at that. I was thinking that maybe the way to look at it is less in terms of differences and divisions, but look at commonalities. I'm not a computer scientist myself, but I've worked closely alongside programmers for some years, and the thing that I've learned from that, it's really no different to, say, commissioning a piece of work from somebody, a builder, for instance. Part of the process of making the most of your collaboration is looking for points of commonality and looking for a way to communicate that both sides understand. So I think one needs to worry less about, does it have to be done this way or that way, but can the person appropriate for the task understand what it is that they need to do? And that's incumbent on everyone to go slightly outside their comfort zone. And so rather than trying to master everything, and there's nothing wrong with being a more skilled at one part of it, but to be very open-minded as to what you need to do to communicate your skill area to other people you might need to deal with.
I think I agree with you. A lot of it's a problem of communication. I think we all do need to start becoming more computer aware. I think there are a lot of specialisms out there, a lot of people who we can't involve in decisions on the computer, on the web, because they simply don't understand the ideas and they don't understand the basic structure. So I think that there is a place for every discipline on the web, definitely. I think we have to get better at explaining it without jargon, without terminology, which is very difficult for the average person to understand, and find a way to deliver it in a time-efficient manner, because at the moment, if you do want to understand it, you have to invest quite a large amount of time in your education. We need to find a way of delivering that much quicker, so that everybody can become involved, because there isn't a subject out there that's not being impacted at the moment.
Can I ask a question back then?
Yes.
Sort of how much knowledge do you think people need because of the web and how it works? You know, either of the technology or of just the way that this huge information system is, you know, all around the planet and difficult to control. What do you think people need to understand to make them good citizens? You know, sort of, or good citizens on the web.
I think what they don't need, what they probably think they need, is programming and building things. I don't think they need that, but I think they do need to understand how decisions are made, how the infrastructure works, what processes engineers would go through in making a decision, which is probably very different to how we would, and how they build their understanding of how the world works.
Mm-hmm. Maybe technology is bridging different sciences. Yeah. So we need to think more in an interdisciplinary way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm. And humanities.
Yep.
And social sciences.
True.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the last question now, which is a bit different, and it is there an international initiative for web neutrality? I think, Les, you were keen to comment on that.
Well, one of the answers to this, I think it's very, very interesting in this one. What does it mean for the web to be neutral? And I think you can answer that in lots of ways. So one of the important ways of trying to balance between different people's interests is something called the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium. And they take a responsibility in trying to make sure that all the technical components of the web, all the things that the exchange of web data and the protocols behind that, and the different kinds of data and the way that information is represented and understood, they take a very big role in doing that and trying to mediate between, say, big companies like Google and Apple and Facebook and Microsoft, and you know, small companies, industry, but also different kinds of actors, like, you know, sort of civil society, people who want to use this information, the United Nations, UNESCO, people who have an interest in the way that a global information system is used and making it useful and to citizens, useful for for the benefit of the public good rather than just for making money for companies. So the W3C is a very important organisation, but there are other examples. You studied UNESCO, didn't you? And what they hoped the benefit of the World Wide Web would be in a report that they brought out, what was it, 20, 30 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
ICTs, and what were they hoping for? That the web would achieve.
Yeah, in 1980, their vision was to give voice to people through a interconnected web of communications, not centralized. And I think more of their ambitions are now investigated through the World Economic Forum.
I think unfortunately net neutrality is actually a term that comes from the legal community though, and so it has to be decided within legal frameworks. And that's not going to be a global drive. That's something that has to be decided within regions.
Possibly. Well, there is a paradox between the freedom and security. So we just then we are more reliable in security, or we need more freedom. So maybe the other way around is not to look as a paradox, but as a dynamic movement that helped to develop the web.
Can I ask, how do you find the web do you find in your study and the work that you're doing that the web is a neutral and a balanced place for different parties to exchange information, or do you find it to be a very unbalanced and uneven place that needs some regulation?
Good question. But tricky, I think, to answer, because a lot of the people I look at, they don't, for instance, it's not that they're taking the web for granted, but it's a milieu that they're very happy and they're controlling it and managing it. And, a lot of what I study is open access, open data, and so people are really kind of, they're breaking down barriers, and as part of that they're not creating any barriers, and a lot of the time they're not looking at barriers, they're not looking to find them, they're not looking to see them, and when they do exist, maybe they're kind of maybe a little bit walking over them and not accepting them. And so from that point of view, a lot of the time that I look at the web, I see a slightly different web, I think, from the web that I know that people who are looking at it from a legal framework see. And I think that's...
So you're looking at it in terms of business use of data and open data
and also open source innovation. And so I'm looking at it from this idea of, okay, let's just... I suppose there is that contrast. People want to capture some part for business value, and other people want to create value without capturing that. So I hadn't really thought of it from that point of view.
and Mark, you're interested. You do a lot of study about Wikipedia. Yeah. Would you say that was a balanced and open place, or or not so much?
I mean, it's essentially open and anyone can take part. I mean, it begs a question whether web neutrality and net neutrality are the same thing, because I think we tend to use them interchangeably and perhaps they're not. I mean, I think the web is much more open. Where its inequality perhaps lies is at the point of access to it. But you could say that's a sort of separate issue. I don't find the web to be particularly partial. I mean, there are actors within it who definitely are, but broadly, for those who, I think certainly for those who are able to read into it a bit more and spend more time looking at it, you can find an awful lot. So it's not in that way shut away. I think, in fact, the problems more lie in the layers underneath about how the information that you want to get at gets to you and whether you can access it.
Okay, and Jack, if I can catch you up. So you represent, your study represents the music industry. Yeah. Not famously known for its equality between actors, but does the web help in rebalancing?
Many people have argued that the web has democratized music production because it's allowed independent artists to create and upload content onto sites such as YouTube and other platforms. But at the same time, there's still the major dominant music industry operating with the vast ways of recorded content. But what my research has found out so far is actually companies such as Spotify and Apple Music are contributing to a slight power shift. So it's these companies that are now in control because they have the largest distribution kind of networks and the largest audiences. So I found often that distribution companies and record labels are having to pitch themselves and pitch their content, pitch their clients to these tech companies to encourage them to promote the content that they represent. So we've gone from a situation where it's more about the record labels being in charge, controlling distribution networks, to now with these technology players who are having a greater say in what goes on, how music gets out there.
Great. Well, thank you all very much for your contributions. I think we're pretty much out of time now. We will continue these discussions on the course, so feel free to beam in. The video will be posted up shortly. And thank you very much to everybody for joining in. Thank you.
Thank you.